Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 4.1 demo for the piece I call Bao the Appraiser. So this lady here is named Bao. She is the Appraiser. That's where the title came from. Her whole thing is that she is sent to judge the warriors who prove themselves to sort of be the greatest warriors in history, and she's sort of sent to, she challenges them and judges their skills. That's the premise behind her. So the design of her and sort of where that all came from, there wasn't really much of an idea going in other than I wanted to have a character that just had like a couple of baubles across them. If you remember way back when I did that monk character, the disciple, for the Village Corrupted stuff, I probably commented a lot on how much I love just adding a bunch of little, you know, doodads that tell a little bit of a history on the character, and that was the sort of idea here. When I was in the middle of designing her, I knew that I wanted that big furry thing, which ends up getting bigger, like a big fur cape kind of in the back, and that she was going to have this baggy Japanese influenced clothing, and it was real hard to resist not making it look too sort of like Inuyasha, or I'm so bad on, I used to read Inuyasha religiously, but I can't remember the name of like the bad guy in that. But anyways, he's got sort of that big puffy thing. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just me taking like Inuyasha and mashing it up with that character and then coming out with something like that. So you'll see that throughout the process of this piece, she actually wears red at several points, because that was sort of how I was envisioning her as I was drawing her. And then as it went on, I was like, I gotta get away from this, and so I started seeking other colors. So the line part of this is very self-explanatory. It's fat pencil for all the rough stuff, fat pencil for the final lines, and I didn't really massage the final lines that much. They're sort of just laid down as is without much flair. Kind of trying to go for a little bit of that watercolor look, and a sort of simple line similar to, not an animation cell, but maybe something you'd see in like some animation production work maybe coming out of Japan, although maybe a little finer detail than that, because this is just one illustration and not part of a rapid series of explorations. So that's the premise for the lines. Really simple stuff. And also the lines aren't black. They look black, but upon close inspection, you'll see that they're just a really dark gray, trying to get a little bit of that graphite look out of it. But when we get into the flat process, I did the flats using a series of water brushes and things like that. I don't remember the exact brush I used because I played with lots of brushes just to make sure I was getting the look that I was going for. And the purpose was to keep it loose, keep it messy, and try to keep it looking a little natural medium. I wasn't going like crazy on the natural medium look for this, but just enough. So I knew I was eventually going to lay in like a watercolor texture, and I knew I was going to use like watercolory type things, but I wasn't really trying to kill myself to make it look absolutely real media. So I hope the recording quality is good on this video. I'm actually doing this on a rooftop in Barcelona. I should have already posted my update video so that you guys can get a little bit of an insight. My family and I just relocated from Hamburg, Germany to Barcelona, and I'm just sort of desperate for finding free time to do these videos. The pieces I'm doing all the time, but you know, setting aside time where everybody has to be quiet or I have to be sequestered in a room is a little bit of a pain in the ass. So I hope this isn't too bad. So now we're onto the sword. This is really just straight design, nothing special. I didn't really have anything in mind other than the fact that she has various elements across her that look like they come from different places. That was intentional. When I get to the handguard hilt sort of area, I use the symmetry tool in Procreate just real fast. I just lay it down. You can go into the part where you edit the symmetry tool, and then you can position the line like I did to sort of run that part of the sword, and then you can get symmetry right there. So you'll see that in a second when I'm doing that part of the sword. I feel like I'm saying like a ton, so I'm sorry about that. I'm a little out of practice, I feel. So there's the sword design that I was talking about. It just banged in there real quick with the symmetry. And the rest of the sword is not that complicated. I do some fake writing on it and give it a little bit of something on the end of the handle there. You might have seen there all the lines were turned off for a second, but the stripes on her scarf were not disappeared. That's because I put those on their own layer. I put them there for guides, and then I knew that I would turn those off after I colored it. So now we're just getting into the details of the handhold. Now that the sword is in, it's easier to draw the hand grabbing onto it. And now we'll move on to that cord, finish up the little I guess fibers, the little binding of that cord that's going around her waist, attaching the sword to her. And I originally had a couple of chains hanging down there, and that's what you saw me doodle in there. And then I was like, nah, that's gonna get too noisy with the sword there. I wanted to have like a short little cape, not too fancy, just sort of as good as it needs to be. And now we got to the part where we're doing the actual painting. You can see I wrote what the fuck right there because I tried the water brush and it was like a mess and like multiplied like crazy upon itself, really hard to work with. So I moved on to some other brushes and started playing with those. So I will do a flatting method here where I'm still using the watercolor brush or the watercolory looking brushes, and then I'll edit away to get them where I need to be. But I'm not like clearing anything underneath, and I'm not making them too solid. I think right there that's the fresco brush, looking at it. And so that was the idea, was lay it in kind of loose, make sure that it, you know, it's not too messy, and then if it picks up colors from underneath, so be it. That's what I'm going for. That was sort of the idea behind the way it was colored. When we get to the shadow phase, I actually do the select paint, select clear, which is linked down below. And it's cool because since everything else was made kind of messy, it just sort of keeps everything messy, which worked out for this piece. So you can see I've already gone through tons of little color shifts. There's the McDonald's era. That's what I call this version. It did not work out. And so here I'm just saying like, okay, screw it. Let's keep flatting and we'll figure out exactly what these colors are going to be later because it's not working out. You can already see here though, this bright red and like the cut of her clothing and everything, it's like so Inuyasha. So I'm like, okay, I got to get away from this. So at one point I went a little bit green, but there's something about the green that felt like, I mean, for the purposes of this piece, she's like the main character, right? And there's something about that color green that feels like a secondary character. I don't know why, that's just the way it sort of works for me. You know, reds feel very primary. I mean, it's a primary color, but I mean primary like the primary character. It's fiery, it's important, that type of shit. The green feels more like a supporting character, and I don't just mean supporting like in the traditional narrative sense. I mean like supports the main character directly in fights or something like that. So now that all the flats are starting to get finalized, you're gonna see me do like a bunch of little shifts again to try and like get that color sorted out. Here I went with the fat pencil again and I set it to white and just put it on top of everything like it's a white chalk pencil that's just sitting on top of everything. That was on purpose. When you see this piece up close, it's really obvious. And then we move into adding a little bit of more detail to the feathers and trying to get some of these colors sorted out. And there's the shadow pass now. The shadow pass was done with like a desaturated purple like usual, really light color, and then tweaked sort of as it went on. What you saw me throw on there very briefly was like, yeah, let's test this color out. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I may have to tweak the opacity, but that's fine. And now I'm going through and doing select paint, select clear, which is why this is going through very methodically, and you sort of see the cape get painted first, and then the scrolls, and then the main part of her outfit, and all of that kind of stuff. So that is all by the book, normal way I do it, just using this messy brush and keeping it loose, doing select paint, select clear, moving up through the layers so that it is cleaned up for the other sections. It keeps everything local to where that shadow needs to go. As you can see here, it's going through that sort of brassy gold area, now then the leather, then the wrappings, and then the little binding that goes around it. And now moving through basically just the remainder of the layers that are there. Okay, we're just doing the last bit of trinkets. The feathers, the elbow pad, the ringlets, all that kind of stuff. For a second here, you're going to see a color flash across the entire screen, and then the shadows are going to look different when it's all done. Right there. Let's talk about that. So all it really is let's use Fresco for now. There's other brushes that are probably better, but I think this will get the point across. Just take like a blue, and we'll paint like a blobby mess in the middle. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, now let's get that sort of like light gray purple and just fill a whole new layer with it. Set that layer to multiply, and then we'll just select that previous one, and then we'll clear it. And I do it twice just to make sure it's like a real good clear, since there's a lot of weird opacity stuff happening here. And now we blur that multiplied layer so that it starts encroaching on the edges of the other layer. Now I select it again, select the inverse of it, and then clear that. So now we have something here that's just affecting the edges anywhere there's like opacity. I turned it to normal for a second, duplicated it, merged it, and then set it to multiply again. And now here you can sort of tweak it and do whatever you want with it. It's really dirty and messy right here, so let's select this other layer again, select the inverse, and clear it again just to get rid of some of the extra mess. So you can see right there what it's doing to it. This might not be the best example. A better example is probably what's actually in the piece, where there's like a big solid mass and then you're just having that encroach on the edges a little bit. And there's lots of different ways you might be able to pull this off, but let's just throw in a color in the background and set both of those other layers to multiply. This is a bad color that I started with here, so we'll lighten it up in a second. There we go. So we lighten that up, so that'd be like a base color, and then maybe this blue is like our shadow layer. So set that to multiply and lower it, and then we can tweak the multiply on top that's doing that sort of like heavier wet edging. That's what's happening there. Like you can see it really clearly at the bottom of her legs, like by her knees. And then we added in a little bit of bounce right there. Started to do some splatter stuff, only kept a very minimal amount of it. In fact, I think I ended up getting rid of it all before the end. Did some darkening around the fur. I made the severed hand glow just a little bit. That's a little weird looking. It doesn't really keep it very watercolory looking. It looks a little digital now, but it's fine. I wanted it to glow, so I think that was fine. And now I'm going in and just adding a couple little tweaks here and there. And right there was a big saturation boost at the end. Even though I wanted it to look like natural medium and a little on the desaturated side at the end, I still wanted her to be a little on the punchy side, so I gave it just a little bit of a boost with color balance. So that's it. That's the whole piece. I hope you enjoyed it. I think she's a pretty fun character, so maybe you can come up with some crazy stories for her to be a part of. Thanks for watching, and please consider liking and subscribing. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.